for the first part of pre-production, Kyle and I were just sort of going through the script and talking about the characters' journeys through each of these pieces of action. Kyle would then go off with his amazing team and they would start working on it and coming up with as many innovative, interesting things. And they had the game there and they were playing the game all the time and they were kind of mining the game for things that we could bring to life in a really massive way.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, multiversal champions compete in a tournament that could determine the fate of the world, in director Simon McQuoid's martial arts fantasy, Mortal Kombat II. The sequel to 2021's Mortal Kombat follows Johnny Cage, a martial arts actor who is recruited to join a group of fighters in an interdimensional tournament. Fighting against supernatural foes and alien warriors alike, he moves up in the ranks, aiming to stop a tyrannical emperor who threatens the very existence of Earth. In addition to the Mortal Kombat films, McQuoid's other directorial credit includes the short film The Nighttime Economy. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, McQuoid spoke with director David Sandberg about filming Mortal Kombat II. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
What a great movie. I mean, it's so fun. I love that Johnny Cage is in this one. I mean, he's such a fun character. And I could watch a whole movie of that, like Cage Fury, you know, that 80s, 90s kind of action movie. That must have been so fun to shoot just that part.
Yeah, that scene actually we shot that quite late in the schedule. So by that time, we'd all been through quite a bit together, and the cast they're such a great cast. They all really got on really well. So that scene was we shot it in this sort of shed because it was going to rain that night, so we had to go indoors, and a lot of the other cast came along to watch because everyone's really excited about it. That like they were shooting it on film, and we're shooting it and sort of used a lot of techniques that would have been that they used in those very early 90s films. And so as we're shooting that, above there was a little office in this shed, and there was this staircase that goes up the side, and I've got these great photos of all the other cast members up the side, all cheering Carl on as he was doing this stuff, wearing that ridiculous outfit. So it was great fun.
But so you had to change last minute, sort of the location of it then, you were going to be outside, or? Yeah,
we changed that location multiple times because it was one of those. It was the scene that was quite contained, but it was later in the schedule. So as things like actor strikes happened, we were constantly moving the puzzle pieces around, and then just as we found we were going to do sort of inside shipping containers, and then it was like, well, that was going to be outside, and then what ended up happening, the actor strike moved us into the rainy season on the Gold Coast. So then that's why we actually had rain machines outside.
Okay,
and then the real rain blended in with the rain machines. It all worked out really well.
Oh, I love that you shot that on film, but then it's like, wasn't there almost like a VHS kind of layer to it, or like it feels kind of like watching an old VHS?
Yeah, there's a little piece at the start of it where you get when you put in a VHS tape, it would do the roll.
Yeah.
So we had the roll bars in there and the sound of that going on. To sort of wanted something that was going to signal that this is a separate piece within the film.
Yeah.
So we rather than just running straight onto it.
And that was a miniature helicopter you blew up?
It was a miniature helicopter we blew up, yeah. It was just a model. It was about so big. And I just wanted to do it as a mini element. I wanted it to feel like it was just like a little model in the sky. So that was great fun.
So, you know, I've done a couple of movies with like stunts and visual effects and action. So watching this, I'm like, oh man, this is so much work and so complicated. Like I know how long it takes, and like you have to shoot like little pieces and plan so much. So what is your process? Like how do these fight scenes and action scenes come to be?
Well, step by step is the sort of very simple answer, but there's sort of two pieces to it. So there's all of the fights and the action. Kyle Gardner, who's the stunt coordinator, he and I did the first film together, and we worked out our process through that first film. And then when we came to the second film, we both had worked together, and we both realized, we know how to make this more efficient, and we know how to make this better for the film. So that what I wanted is for the character and the story to feel that even more within the fights. And so for the first part of pre-production, Kyle and I were just sort of going through the script and talking about the characters' journeys through each of these pieces of action, and really plotting where they needed to start and end across the whole film, but also within each piece of action, within each fight. So a lot of conversation about story and character, so that we knew that what we were doing, we're putting in the most fundamental parts of the story never got lost within the action. And then once we'd done that, Kyle would then go off with his amazing team, and they would start working on it and coming up with as many innovative, interesting things. And they had the game there, and they were playing the game all the time, and they all know it really well. So they were kind of mining the game for ideas and things that we could bring to life in a really massive way. And then what they would do is Kyle would say, okay, come on over. So they had one of the stages in the Gold Coast, and I would go over and we'd do what we'd call the stage play. And so all the stunt team would perform it generally at half speed in cardboard boxes, and they'd go through the whole thing, and then she does this, and then she's going to flip here, and they would go through it. And then we would talk about it again and say, I don't think that's working. I don't think that's super clear. How are you thinking about shooting? What are we going to do here? How are we going to make sure this particular piece of information lands? And that was a really crucial part of the process, because what they normally did and what we did on the first film, you talk about it and then they do it and commit it to video and do the fight viz. Mm. And what that was doing is it meant it flipped into another cycle, and they had to shoot stuff again. And I said, I think that's wasting time. So let's get it all perfectly right and then commit it to the fight viz. So we didn't have to change the fight viz. And then PJ, the AD, got that, pulled it all apart and scheduled it exactly so that we knew. And then sometimes PJ would say, there's too much in that. You got too many shots. We can't do that. So we'd go, okay. So we'd go back in and work it out and take some things out. And we became an editing process before Stuart, the editor, who is here, by the way. Stuart's here somewhere. There he is. That guy is he's a genius, that guy. So Kyle and his team, the editors and VFX people on his team, would sort of go through that process once, and then Stuart would look at that and we'd talk about it. So it was just a constant conversation.
So it was mostly based on like real live action stunt. Did you do like pre-viz as opposed to like stunt viz as well, like computer animated pre-viz, or was it mostly stunt based? We
trialed a system that Kyle wanted to try, and we did it on a couple of the fights where it was all this kind of motion capture, and he then put over the top of they did it in a traditional way, and then over the top of that they put the characters in later in sort of like a post-viz type of way. But ultimately the good old-fashioned lo-fi cardboard boxes was really the cleanest line to the information for us to be able to know what we were going to shoot. So did it for a couple of those, and we learnt some stuff. But yeah, we just that was really the process.
Were there other lessons learned from the first one that you could sort of adapt to this, or like things you wanted to do on the first one?
I think that the main thing that I realized for myself was after shooting so many big commercials and having big productions that the actual shoot days and bringing something to the screen was the part that I felt at most ease with by then. That I know how to run the set. All that's sorted. What I learned a lot was about the long form narrative and the script structure and the script and what. So I worked a lot between the two films for my own learning on how to make that better, because I felt that. And as an example, the opening of the first film was written quite late in the process, in when we made the first film, and that allowed us to have a very sort of clean way of bringing that to life. And I think what I learned from that was, I want the whole film, the whole second film, to be that creative process for me, so that I could really maximize all the things that really mattered emotionally and for the story and for the characters.
All right. Because the first Mortal Kombat was your feature debut, which is quite a movie to have as your first movie. But I mean, you've done a ton of commercials and stuff, and commercials for video games. I've seen like Halo and things like that. Was that sort of how you got the job? Because you were like, oh, he's a video game guy with sort of making it live action, or how did it come?
I think there was probably an element of that. I think the risk gap was slightly narrower. I also I got asked point blank, I still remember this in one of the meetings very early on. It's like 100 years ago now, but what is your point of view on all the violence? And I'm not, I mean, take a look at me. I'm not really a violent fighter type guy. And I said, if we are worrying about the violence, if we're leading with that, then we've already failed. It's a very important part of the DNA, but we've got to. In my opinion, the game was very popular because of the characters and the love of the characters. So we needed to really put everything into that. So I think the studio really liked that.
And was it a big challenge to sort of do that as your first movie? Like how did what was that experience like?
It was hard, but not that it was easy, nothing's ever easy, but it had its challenges, but I got my arms around it and I felt sort of pretty good about it. And there were moments through the process, you know what it's like. You got when you're going through it, you're learning. You shoot one day and then you go, probably shouldn't have done that. And then you're just sort of learning all the time. So I felt I loved the process of being able to sort of learn so much in real time, but also then it was a real privilege. I feel very lucky, and I'm very grateful to the studio for they asked me back. To sort of apply what I learned on the first one and be able to put it onto the second one was a really enjoyable creative process. So that was great. I loved that.
And what was the biggest challenge on this one?
I guess the tone of this film, I wanted to make sure it had this very maximalist quality to it, because I felt like that was a piece of the DNA of Mortal Kombat that, while I was aware of it for the first film, and I've obviously been living with this for a long time, so I really that was a component that perhaps in the first film I wasn't sure how to get my hands around, and then once we were going into the second one, and I could put the things in place and plan and work out, I want to go to this realm and I want these characters. Like having Baraka in there was both kind of exciting and very frightening at the prospect of like having to bring that character to life, because
how so?
Well, he's a character in the games whose teeth touch when he talks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
So it sort of doesn't make any physical sense, and it's like, so how are we who's gonna play that person? Like, how are we going to find that person?
Someone with those teeth.
Yeah. So it was actually ratcheting up the level of difficulty quite high, even though I knew I wanted that wildness to be in the second film. So things like that. So, but being able to put those things in place from the get-go, I want us to go to Netherrealm in the third act. I want it to be in Adenia. I want it to be about Katana's revenge story. Johnny obviously was in it. And so it was in putting those things together, it sort of helped me kind of cleanly plot how it was going to all come together.
And Baraka's mouth, was it like prosthetic on the day and then CG to sort of make it talk, or?
It was 95% prosthetic, real in camera.
Yeah.
Which lots of R&D, lots of testing, lots of mistakes, lots of that doesn't work, that works. And we sort of learned through all of prep was a lot of that process. And then the CG was actually adding background in to make it go up further. So we had to
see the actor underneath.
Yeah, so you could actually see through rather than like, oh, that's where the rubber is there. So that little touch, and then we realized, oh, that's all we actually really need to do is just sort of provide that negative space. So it kind of gives it that unreal quality. But that was actually fairly light touch.
Right. I was really impressed by the sets in this movie because, I mean, I assume you have a lot of digital set extensions, but it looked like a lot of it was built. But you had quite a bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, there were, I would say, everything was built to as great a degree as we could. Adenia and the town square that whole town was built in stage 9 on the Gold Coast, which is, I think, the second biggest stage in the world or something like that.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but it's a big one. And so I don't like shooting anything. I prefer everything in camera. If it was up to me, everything, originally I wanted to build everything outside.
Yeah.
And everyone, then it was like, no, we can't afford to build a weatherproof town. And then I was like, no, I only want to shoot during these times. And then, a few people sort of looked at me like, you moron, what are you talking about? So anyway, we did it on the stage. And then the Tarkatan village was all out in a quarry that we built all that. So that was outside. And yeah, and then all the other things were sets with VFX extensions. So my whole approach is let's get as much in camera as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And then we just enhance the realism with the fire, the lightning, all those sorts of things. And where someone physically needed to fly through the air, we fly them through the air. And so that's where the stunt team were amazing. So a lot of those flips that Katana did, and that's all Zia, her stunt double, doing actually on wire, just flying through the air on that stage. And that's just in prep, just working out. And those are the things you can do when you work out all the fights really early or as early as possible, because it allows then Kyle and his team to set all the rigging the right way in the stages, and therefore it all lands perfectly. So I sort of feel like a really meticulous process allows for more of the good stuff to go on screen.
Yeah. How many days did you have to do this?
I can't remember. Stuart might remember, but it was, I don't know, 80 days main unit, 60 days second unit or something like that.
Yeah.
Might be more than that. I might be underselling it, but.
Are there like deleted scenes or things that hurt to take out, whether at the script stage or like of the?
Yeah, there's a few scenes in there that I wish were in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that you still shot?
Yeah, we shot them. Yeah.
Or are they
not many.
On like the Blu-ray or home video release?
Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, there was a couple of things in there that I mean, there was only really one little scene that in the end both Stuart and I were like, well, we don't really need this. And then it just sort of never came up. But it was a pretty minor thing. But it wasn't much that wasn't on the screen, but there was a few little things that I thought, oh, that would have been good.
Yeah. Did you keep any cool props from the movie?
I've got one of Katana's fans.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I assume that you didn't get the hat of.
No, that was a bit
Wow.
hard to put in the hand luggage to go home.
Oh, right.
And I think security might have had a problem with that. But
They didn't have a problem with the
fan,
the
yeah.
fan.
I actually said to them, I have got a plastic prop in my suitcase that looks a lot like a blade, and they're like, "Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it."
Okay, that was all
Yeah,
good.
that was great.
How was it sort of decided what characters to use this time, or like?
Well, the first step was to up the female representation.
Yeah,
that was the first step, and everyone wanted to do that. And then in doing that, it was just logical to have it be Katana. We knew we needed another who was going to be our bad guy, and that was Shao Kahn. So once Katana comes in, Shao Kahn comes in, and then Jade comes in, and then Sindel comes in. So that did sort of two things at once. It upped the female. I mean, Katana's they're all fan favorites, but Katana is such a high profile character. That was as obvious as bringing Johnny in. So that started it, and then it was sprinkling in those extra bits of crazy. So that's when Baraka came in, and that's when, and then we wanted to bring Kano back.
yeah.
So it's like, well, we're going to have Quan Chi, and so that was a sort of a logical progression. And then there were others we thought about, but then it was like, that character is going to be too heavy on VFX. That's not an efficient use of money, and then so yeah, that pretty much sort of summed up that process. It was sort of quite simple in some ways.
Yeah.
So
weren't originally like a huge fan of the games, or like you hadn't really played them, right? So
yeah,
how do you sort of do your homework? How do you get sort of so involved in the world?
Well, first time around, so I'd never really played it, and I knew of it, and but I just felt the characters were so compelling.
Yeah.
And in the process of pitching it for the first time, I just did a huge deep dive into and there's a lot to be able to read and understand, and it's very complex. There's a lot there. There's a lot of sort of there's different histories, and there's different sort of network, sort of intertwined stories, and there's this character, and then, there's a lot there. So I'm not suggesting I knew it all, but I certainly did a big deep dive on that.
Yeah. I mostly played the earlier games, and there wasn't that much of a story in the games, right? Maybe there are in the later ones that I haven't really played, but it feels like that's sort of a good thing, that you sort of can create your own story in the world.
Yeah, there's some really key fundamentals that make up, like, the Shao Kahn Katana, Sindel, and there's and the Sub-Zero Scorpion, and the Lin Kuei and Hanzo Hasashi. There's all these. There's that sort of stuff. There's a lot more to it than that. Like, that's just so there's some fundamentals there, and it was a matter of taking the fundamentals and then working with them to be able to write a story. And Jeremy Slater, the writer, did an amazing job, and he was great to work with, and he, after I was like, it'd be good, this character, I'd love to go to these realms, I want to do this, and obviously we've got the tournament, and then he just sort of took all that, absorbed it into his amazing brain, and sort of just started to put it all together, and then he also did some, deep diving on backstory, and then we just sort of discussed things like, well, in the game it was this, but it was this. Oh, that seems okay. We can do, you're just constantly talking about it, really.
Yeah. I mean, fan reactions from what I've seen have been very positive. And I think it's because you've stayed so true to like the characters, and like you have so many, like you get the details right.
Yeah, I mean, doing something like Mortal Kombat or any sort of IP that has such a history and such loved characters and lore, I wanted to respect the game and respect the characters as much as that was what it was all about. Everything was built on that. Like, okay, why is this character doing that in the game? And it was just this constant in sort of study and analysis of why why the fans love certain things, and then there's little sort of fun things we can put in, but then there's also costume design, and like even with Jade's costume, that's actually like, if you look at it closely, it's about 3 different versions of the costume all in one.
Sort of merged together.
Yeah, they'll merge, so they're sort of embossed, because the early games were a little racy.
Right.
So we sort of tried to bring in elements of the designs and layer things up, so fans saw the layering of the history of the characters within the and we and each character sort of got a different approach, it was just so I just wanted to respect the material. Sometimes we change things here and there because it was when you go from a video game, which is none of it's real, and you go into reality, then certain things just don't work, and no matter how you try. I mean, Baraka's teeth being an example. So there. I mean, I love that part of the creative process of just sitting and talking about all those details, and all the detail that's like there's in the lore of the game, as one example. And I'm not sure where this came from, but there's an Edenian thistle as its flower, the Edenian flower. And so we thought, let's take that and let's put that as a symbol in all the armor at the start of the film. And then that design then carries over to Katana's fans and what's engraved into her silver armor and what's in her. So I'm always looking for places to sort of build sort of a level of authenticity and a level of history and depth to the worlds. And even into the Tarkatan village, one of my favorite shots in the film is that oneer that takes us through with the young girl.
Yeah.
And that was doing a couple of things at once. One was I felt Baraka needed a pretty big introduction. 2, I wanted to show that this society had multiple generations. I always thought, what would kid Tarkatans look like, right? So I thought, okay, that'd be good. And then I needed to, so I also wanted to take us through the main street. It's like, okay, here it is. So here's where we are. And then on top of that, I wanted to show the reverence and show that Baraka was the king of this village. And so all of those things, and I love it. And she was great, the little girl. She was awesome. So.
Yeah. I mean, these types of movies must be the most fun for costume designers and like production designers, where it is this sort of fantasy kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was really hard work because there's so many costumes and so many conversations. But Cappy Island, who's the costume designer, and her team did an amazing job. I mean, it was just relentless in pre-production getting that made.
And we have the great score by Benjamin Wallfish. So doing a sequel, what was the approach there for like the score? Is it like, keep doing what you did, or like try something new, or like what was the process there?
Well, just so everyone knows, the reason we're talking together is because of Benjamin Wallfish. He's our connective tissue. And because I was like, who's going to moderate this? And I was like, no, I'll ring Ben and see what and so anyway, David kindly offered. But it was to not be to think about using the theme in a different way, and to take what is the emotional through line of each of the main stories, in Katana's revenge story and Johnny's sort of from down on his luck all the way up. And it was to how to really dig into those and have the audience feel the weight of that and really continue to give it scale, and to continue to really just bring that maximalist emotion to it. And Ben and I were only talking the other night about how our next project together is going to be much more minimal because it was quite a bit of work. Ben works extremely hard, as you know, and there was a lot to it. But I after it been a while since I've seen the film and in the premieres when we watched it, I was really impacted by the music. It had been a while since I've heard it, and I really think he tapped in beautifully to the emotion that was running through the scenes and, told the story really well. So he did an amazing job.
And then what is next? Is there anything you can say about what comes next for you?
I can't really divulge at the moment, but there are a couple of things that are very close, and you know how it goes. Sometimes it all feels like it's about to shoot tomorrow, and then all of a sudden you're not. So, but yeah, I've got one thing in particular that's very close. Will
there be more Mortal Kombat?
I'm not sure. We'll see. Right. We'll see.
Well, I hope
just come out, so we'll see.
Because this was awesome. So yeah, love the movie. Thank you very much for doing this, and thank you everyone for
Thanks,
coming out
guys.
here.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.